Hello, everyone. This is Michelle Perta, Life and Marriage Coach for Moms. And I'm coming on here today to talk to you about two very, very simple yet powerful words that you should say if your husband loves to argue or loves to be right. If you have any guesses, I would love for you to type it in the comments what you think those two words are. Okay, so let me know in the comments what you think the two words are, and I'll give you some backstory as to why I'm coming on here to share this. This was absolutely 1000% inspired by a coaching session that I had this morning with a client. Her husband is a very passionate, bright man. And because he's so bright, he's often right, but also loves to be right. And so they often get into arguments because anytime she disagrees with him, he views it as a challenge. And for whatever reason, he doesn't like that they disagree. And it becomes this big, ugly argument. And it happens a lot. And so this is my feedback to her, and my feedback to you. If you are in a similar position, if your husband often loves to be right and loves to argue, and you're just like, I'm not here for this. Why are we arguing about this seemingly stupid topic? Can we just get on with our lives, please? So the two words, and this may be painful for you to hear, and if it is, I want you to ask yourself why and what you're making it mean by saying this, okay? So the two words are, you're right. Technically it's three words, but I'm making the you are into one word. You are right. You are right. Now, years back, there is no way in hell you would catch me saying that to someone in the middle of an argument, because I am the type of person who likes to dig my heels in if I feel like I'm being challenged. And I loved to be right. And so there's no way in hell I would say that, because I made that mean that I was wrong. So in order for someone else to be right, that meant that I was wrong. That is a belief that I held. And so I want to know, is that a belief that you're holding when you think about saying those words to your husband? That's the ego. The ego's like, we're right. He's wrong. There's no way in hell we're going to say he's right, because that means that we have lost. We have lost. And if these are the thoughts that are coming up in your mind, I want you to ask yourself, what do you think you have lost? What are you in competition for? What are you fighting against? And if you take a step back, you and your husband are on the same side. And it's beneficial to look at the issue outside of you guys. You guys are a team, and the problem is outside of you. And so what needs to happen is you two need to come together to resolve the conflict instead of viewing each other as the problem. The problem is the problem. You two are a couple. You guys are partners. You guys love each other. And so you show up together as a united front to fight the problem, not each other. And so the words that I shared with my client today was that by saying you're right, you can still find ways to ease the tension, because by using those words, nobody's going to be like, no, I'm wrong. How dare you say I'm right? Everybody loves to hear you're right. And I'm not saying make up a reason to say that he's right, but I'm sure there is something that he's saying that he's right about. And just by saying you're right doesn't mean that you agree with everything that he's saying. You can just agree with a piece of what he's saying and saying you're right. And then, insert whatever it is that you think he's right about. By doing this, you're essentially saying, we agree on something. We agree on something. And when you find agreement, this is like bringing back deja vu when I made the communication course, which is available for you if you ever want to purchase it. When you find agreement, that makes things a lot easier to move forward. Instead of building a wall between you two, you are building a bridge. Okay, so if he's the type who loves to be right, he's probably going to find it difficult to back down because he's had this habit of digging his heels in and asserting himself because he makes it mean something about him to be wrong about something. But guess what, ladies? We're wrong about things all of the time. No one is right in 100% of the situations that we find ourselves in. And so by being able to admit that someone else is right, again, not necessarily meaning that we're wrong, but being open to owning where we are wrong, you're building a bridge, which when you do that, instead of building a wall, he may, over time, start to see like, oh, I don't have to fight right now because she's not putting up a fight. She is showing up differently. So maybe I don't have to be so stubborn about this. She's willing to let down this drawbridge. I don't know why I'm sticking with this bridge thing, but work with me here, right? She's willing to extend this bridge out to me. Maybe I can take a step onto the bridge and make my way towards her, right? This is all about compromise. This is all about humility. This is all about compassion, partnership, love, commitment, and consistency. And so when you say you're right, and you establish that foundation of, hey, we're not so different right now. I agree with you on this one thing. That lends itself to pave the way for more places for you to agree on. And it also changes the frame of how you're having the conversation. Instead of finding different ways of how you two are just on opposite ends of the spectrum of the issue, when you establish that foundation of agreement, you switch your mindset to then look for other areas of agreement. And then you also bring on your curiosity to figure out, okay, well, what does he mean by that? Because if we agree on this, maybe we're not so different in these other areas. Even if you still disagree in some of those areas, you can at least understand and validate and acknowledge why he might feel differently. Maybe it's something in his past. Maybe he has different opinions, or maybe he doesn't have all of the information that you have, or vice versa. Do your best to turn it into a conversation, a working conversation, what's the word that I'm thinking of? Something that is making progress towards having compromise or an understanding, even if it ends with, I agree to disagree. Try and find ways to lift your heels instead of dig them in. Try and find a way to figure out, why does he feel the need to dig his heels in? Where does he not feel heard? Saying you're right about something is another form of validating and saying, hey, I hear you. Hey, this is what I agree with you on, right? And I'm just going to use my client's example. They had been fighting about a fire blanket, right? So they live in the forest, and My client had seen an advertisement or commercial about how a fire blanket could be used to extinguish a barbecue grill that's on fire. And her husband just thought that that was like blasphemy. Like, that's stupid. Like, why would you believe something that an advertisement told you? And this became like an issue because they disagreed. And in that moment, instead of saying, yeah, you're right, that would be dumb to blindly assume that an advertisement is spouting out the truth, right? The same as like, oh yeah, it's on Google, it must be true. Like, no, it's not. Instead of focusing on him criticizing her, she could have said, you're right. That would be unwise or dumb to blindly accept what someone is saying when their sole job is to sell you that thing, right? And then continue it with an and, right? We often continue the conversation with a but, which automatically dismisses everything that comes before that, right? Like, you're right, but it doesn't end well. You're right, and then what she ended up doing was, let's check CAL FIRE to verify. But because she had already said, you know, don't call me that or don't say that, it became about something else. And so they started to steer away from the original problem. And then it became about them going back and forth and back and forth. And how often does that happen to you, right? That happened to me all of the time in the past, where we'd be fighting about something and then however long later, we're like, what were we fighting about? I don't remember. I just know that I don't like you right now. And I'm going to find all the ammo that I have and shoot it at you. Right? But that's not the point. That's not the point. And so use those two words, you're right, to find agreement. It's a great way to de-escalate the situation so that they don't feel like they need to fight so hard and that you're not there to amplify the argument. You're there to be like, how do we move forward from this? What can we learn from this? How can we grow together from this? Okay, so that is what I have to share with you about what you can say to cut the tension if your husband loves to be right. All right, bye everyone.